The goal of the show is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. And we also share advertising news you need to know in 60 seconds or less on our LinkedIn. You got to follow us there. It's unlike anything you've ever seen before. I promise you that. And turn on post notifications at Breaking and Entering Media. Today's guest is Jacques Spitzer, the CEO and CCO of Raindrop, a 4-time Emmy Award-winning agency that has quietly but powerfully built one of the most effective creative shops in the world. If you've ever laughed at a Dr. Squatch ad, bought something because of a centaur selling you natural deodorant, or seen one of the most viral YouTube campaigns of the last decade, chances are Jacques and his team were behind it. Under his leadership, Raindrop has helped build brands like Dr. Squatch, Native, Lumi, Manscaped, Ridge Wallet, and Sprouts Farmers Market. They've helped them generate over 1 billion views and $1 billion in sales, while redefining what modern creative success looks like. They call themselves the leading brand performance agency in the world. And this episode talks about what that means, his story, how he built this basically for his first job, his own agency, and it's been growing ever since. We talk about DTC. We talk about retail advertising and tech advertising as well. Towards the end, you'll hear Jacques' take on what the history books will say about this era in advertising and what advice he gives to entry-level advertising talent walking through either Raindrop stores or whatever agency doors you're walking into for the first time. You're going to love this episode. Connect with Jacques on LinkedIn and give us 5 stars on Apple. But most importantly, follow us on LinkedIn. That's the best way to do it. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Jacques Spitzer, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Gino, I'm good. I'm happy to be, you said about 400 episodes into this Breaking and Entering universe. And you know what? Hopefully I'm worth the wait. 400 episodes in. Congrats on such a great journey.
Thank you so much. I'm pumped. I'm very excited about this episode. Looking at Raindrop as an agency, we have to explore it because you guys are crushing it right now. So we're going to unpack that, who you are, Raindrop, your best advice for the next generation. How does that sound, Jacques?
That sounds great. I can't wait.
Hell yeah. So you're CEO and CCO of Raindrop, a 4-time Emmy award-winning creative agency. You've helped Dr. Squatch grow from a couple million in revenue to 100+ million in revenue. I mean, this is crazy stuff. You got Super Bowl commercials. You've got top performing YouTube ad of 2020. You've been recognized by Forbes, Ad Age, LA Times, San Diego Business Journal. I mean, you're your own podcast host. So you're going to be a pro at this. There's a lot to uncover here. Where should we start? Should we start with you? Should we start with Raindrop? Maybe what you do outside of advertising? What do you want to talk about?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Let's start here. We are 15 years into our journey, which feels very, very strange to say, because I really believe we're just getting started. I am incredibly energized by not only, what we've done, which that was, thank you for the intro, but more so just what we're growing into. And there was I was reading a book, a Rick Rubin book recently. I don't know if I should remember the name of the book. I think it's something about creativity, but he has this great line in there about rules. And he says, rules lead to essentially mediocrity, everything being the same. So if rules lead to mediocrity, everything being the same, the best ways to break that is either to be intentional in breaking rules or be so naive that you don't even realize you're breaking rules. And I feel like the first 15 years of our journey, we were just so naive. We had no idea we were breaking rules. And hopefully the next 15, we can implement some intentional rule breaking as well.
I love it. So 15 years old, Raindrop as an agency. What's the brand of the agency today?
Yeah. In terms of like our own personal brand, where we're
Mm-hmm.
coming from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, it's funny that I just quoted the Rick Rubin stuff because what's fascinating is I feel like most people in the agency world, in the even potential clients that we work with, they they haven't heard of us. Like we're not, we're known in certain circles, but in like, the Ogilvies and the VMLs, like are they sitting awake at night thinking about Raindrop? Maybe not. But the interesting thing is that we have had this really interesting record of success, especially over the last 7, 8 years. Our work with Dr. Squatch and Native and Lumi and Manscaped and Groons and Laundry Sauce, and we just launched Spruce for Procter and Gamble, which is a new weed killer. And so it's like we keep doing this work that keeps building on itself, and people have this sense of, oh, I didn't know who you were, but I've seen your work, or I've bought something. This is the best, is when someone's like, I've bought things because of your work, right? And that's really the number one thing we get. And so we see ourselves kind of as hit makers, kind of um, like a producer. Like when I found out that Ryan Tedder was behind all of these different songs and artists, I was like, oh, that makes sense because he has a certain ear for things. He's got a process that he goes through that isn't just a one hit thing. It's a track record of success. And so I think that's what the number one thing that we get on any sort of new call is either people are like, I've heard of you, or they're like, wow, I bought things because of ads that I've seen from you. And that's a great feeling.
Love that. Makes a lot of sense. And when I saw your client roster, that clicked for me. The you call it brand performance, brand formance.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define what that means? The leading brand formance agency in the world. Give me a rundown on that.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest, you see this debate all the time everywhere, right? And between how much of what you should do should be brand advertising and brand building, how much of it should be performance. And like everything in life, when you get into or statements, they're usually, it's like you're cutting yourself short. It's really an and statement. And so what we've been able to do with these brands is create campaigns that, from the outside, people go, oh, those are viral, right? The number of times I've heard people be like, oh, wow, 500 million views on this Dr. Squatch ad must have gone super viral, right? Most people just assume, okay, 100 million views on native ads, they must have gone viral. It's like, well, no, they're built scalably. They're built so that as you spend behind them, you're getting real time return so you can spend more on them. And that drives the business scalably. So to do that, you got to have brand building and performance at the same time. What I mean by that is there's a lot of products out there selling a lot of product, but they're not building their brand. No one knows their story. They don't have any affinity towards them. It's like, ooh, there's a jacket. I want that jacket. I'll buy that jacket, versus when you have like a Viore, for example, where people are bought into the lifestyle, the feeling, they can charge a premium price. They can have people decide they want to fill their entire closet with that brand. And then ultimately, those people become evangelists. And so, our best campaigns for brands gave them a sense of their own voice that can break through, which is that brand. But then they also are seen through a performance lens. It's not just there's so much beautiful advertising out there that no one will ever know if it led to results. It might
Right.
win awards, but you'll just never know. Like, did it work? I don't know. And so we've been really focused on accomplishing both of those things at the same time.
And it's working. It's
It
absolutely
it it,
working. When you
it
look at the
does.
names of the
Yeah.
brands like Dr. Squatch, Manscaped, Lumi, Native, Ridge Wallet, Sprouts Farmers Market, these are things that I recognize. I've even bought some of these things. It makes a lot of sense that it's working. So you got DTC, retail, and a little bit of tech. Are those the three kind of
Yeah.
categories that you guys crush?
Yeah. Those are the three right now that we tend to see a lot of action in. And I think, it's been interesting because you're seeing and it's been probably the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years. You're seeing the tech industry recognize that people buy from people. They want to be spoken to like a person, and so we're seeing more and more of that. I think, I don't know who exactly to credit for the start of it. I think Monday.com was kind of splashed onto the scene. They were doing a lot of YouTube advertising, a lot of stuff that people found interesting. And now it feels like a lot of consumer facing tech companies are catching on as
Hmm.
well. Um, but yeah, we're doing a ton of retail, a lot of CPG, and yeah,
You,
building brand voices.
you almost make me want to start, like, you almost are inspiring me to create a product, and then I could just work with you guys, and you guys would just sell like a shit ton of it, and it just would crush like a
It's
new, like, I don't know, like a new like dry erase board marker situation. I'm just looking at my office now. I
you're
feel
like
like
looking around, you're like, what can I invent right now?
I'm like, you guys would be able to just get it out there and tell that story so well.
It's funny you say that because we have found that we attract kind of three different types of clients, and it's funny that your gut instinct went there. We do attract funded startups,
Hmm.
right? That those were the laundry sauces and the Groons and For All Nutrition, and a lot of different groups that are in that category. We also attract a lot of people who they have sales but they don't have a brand.
That's a sweet
And so
spot. I feel like that's kind of interesting.
totally, because I mean, we've met people that have 30, 40, 50, $100 million plus in sales, either at retail or in Amazon, and they've never developed. They've basically had distribution, but they don't have any sort of brand awareness. And what happens is they tend to plateau. They get stuck because
Hmm.
then it's like the only thing they have is demand capture, not demand creation.
Interesting. No,
Yeah,
this
and
is
then
interesting.
the largest brands are typically looking for how do I bring that disruptive thinking to my brand. I think we I saw the Bain the this is a brag. I'm not going to say it's a humble brag, but the Bain and Company came out with their most insurgent brands for 2025, and we had 10 brands on that list that we collaborated with in the last 18 months, like the Dude Wipes and the Blooms, and so I I'm really, I think people who want to do something different tend to attract people doing different things, if that makes sense.
What's a team comprised of? So I know traditional creative full service agencies. Have done hundreds of conversations with the CCOs, founders, small independent agencies, small ones, holding company owned ones that are private equity, but they're all like they can do it all more traditional brand campaigns. And then I've had a few that are just performance. And then of course I've had some that claim they can do the mix here. I guess,
Hmm.
like, what is like the ethos, like what's it internally, the culture like, but then also like what type, do you have standard art directors and copywriters, strategists, or is it there's different roles within this agency at Raindrop? How do you guys kind of approach the structure of this organization?
Well, here's what I'll say, Gino, is that you have seen way more than I have. I would be curious to pick your brain on what people are doing, how they're doing it. I think we have so we do have a bunch of copywriters and a bunch of art directors. I think what makes them and us a little bit unique, or our story has been unique, is that early on I think we hired 3 or 4 different people who are now ACD level or higher who had no advertising background. So they were um, they were creators. They were full time comedians in
Yep,
many cases.
makes sense.
Um, they were writers, but they didn't see the world through like a traditional advertising lens. As we've grown, we've definitely balanced out our team with people who are from advertising and have that more seasoned background, with people who are constantly bringing ideas that wouldn't tend to come into the fold. We also we have 5 full-time directors on staff, which is super unique. I don't I'm learning more and more how unique that
Yeah,
is.
definitely.
We do tap into freelancers when there's maybe a specific style or, type of, we definitely, from time to time will tap into freelancers for the right opportunities, but we do have this really interesting integrated way of approaching it where even as we're like giving pitches on the concepts, our directors are in those meetings. And so it's not like this cold handoff once it gets all the way to production. Like they are really integrated into what's the brand, what are they trying to accomplish, what's the overall concept here, and knock on wood, that really helps to create a sense of consistency where there's not this big drop off between the intent of the creative team and the actual output. And then we also have, we have a full design and social departments of, 8 to 12 people each. And so when it comes to extending the campaign omni-channel, we're able to take that into organic social executions, paid social executions, in-store display, anywhere it needs to go. So we are a creative engine for brands, and then we have media partners that we partner with pretty closely on just where we're placing the media as well.
Understood. Got it. That
So I don't
makes
know
a
if that
lot of
answers
sense.
exactly
No,
how
no,
we're structured, but
absolutely.
it is unique in terms of how much production that we do in house. We have 17,000 square feet of facility that we work with. We do full set builds. So
Wow.
definitely unique in that sense. And I couldn't tell you, I think it helps a sense of quality control, but I couldn't tell you how it compares to what else people are doing in the world because it's just the way we've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where is the office at?
We're based in San Diego.
That's right. That's a nice place to work. I've never been, so I'll have to visit.
We'll have to have you out. You
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. This is cool. So how did you get in? Two questions. There's big questions. It's the name of the show. How did you break into advertising? And then what was the point where you were like, I want to create my own thing? So
Yeah.
take that as you wish.
Oh man. Um, so I guess if we were going to go all the way back, breaking into advertising,
Mhm.
they're kind of like one and the same for me because I started so young.
Mhm.
Yeah, I started the agency when I was somewhere between 24 and 25 years old.
Wow.
And so, I always say I started with this ethos of just wanting to help people, which is still what drives us and drives me today. It was like I had no grand vision of building an agency. I had never worked for an agency. I didn't have a background in advertising per se. I was just I can help this. Literally, I'd say I didn't help gym owners. I helped like trainers in the gym, or just it started so small in terms of who I was helping, and built it literally from there, like that small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you go to college? Did you study advertising and marketing? Give me the rundown.
No. That's what I'm saying. I got a degree in communications from
Yeah.
UCSD, which is great.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I did have that I was fortunate to have was, I knew how to use a video camera.
Mhm.
I taught myself how to build WordPress websites. I did work for a year and a half in news, so I had a little bit of sense of like what the news would talk about and cover and what
Yeah,
they wouldn't.
newsworthiness, yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately what I figured out all these years later is, you know, I had a gut instinct for business and I had a gut instinct for storytelling. And when you mix those two, it's basically brand formance, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, as these very small clients saw success, I got referrals and then I got more referrals and I built into one freelancer, then a first time employee and everything else. And then now to, nearly 100 team members and 15 years later. So it, I do have a really untraditional story because I meet so many people who are like, I did decades in these very traditional advertising places. And then I went off and I took one maybe key client, started my own thing. Like that was not our story. It was really just one piece at a time. And I was fortunate. I have a business partner, Adam, who he did work for a couple other larger agencies. So he's been able to help with just understanding like what's out there operationally, how to
Mhm.
structure a team. Like I very much have a yin to my yang. I would not be here
Yeah.
without Adam, 100%.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
would
So
you
I mean, I don't know how to. I didn't really break and enter. I
you just
more
did your
so
own
like
thing.
I kind of
It's
what
badass.
would be the word I what's the word when you move into a home and then you just camp out there? I
Squatter,
forget.
squat.
Squatter. I
Yeah.
squatted. I didn't break or enter. I just squatted for 15 years and now I'm here.
This is incredible. What was the moment that you realized like, okay, this is going to be full time. Like this is going to work out. Was it like you signed a big client? Was it like a
Yeah. I
project that
mean,
came in where you're like, okay, this is I'm secure. I'm staying put.
oh my gosh. It's an interesting question because I remember I was like a year and a half into everything and I was literally just praying. I was like, God, if I shouldn't be doing this, like I'm open to that. Give me a sign, you know,
Mm,
give me something here. Um, and I remember it was funny because I went out to my car and I had a parking ticket on my window. And of course, like it's like those kind of things just happen when you're like at your lowest. You're like, dang, like
I
I'm
got
like,
one for you too, and I'll tell you about it after. Yeah,
I'd love to hear it because it
yeah.
was just like, oh man, I don't know how to accept this from the universe. What is this? Um, and then later that day, we got our first like $4,000 or $5,000 a month retainer with a client. You know, at the time, I wasn't charging that kind of money, so
Yeah.
it was enough to with all the other business I had to like actually make a go at it. So what's funny is now every time when I get a parking ticket, I legitimately see it as good luck about to happen. It's this weird psychological
Oh
thing
my
because
gosh.
it sticks out to me so much. I'll text my wife, I got a parking ticket. I don't go out of my way to get them, but unfortunately they just happen. But yeah, that was, you know, when I first realized that, you know, though we were doing the type of work that could get a retainer type basis, that really helped. And I think, you know, even before all of the like brand formants and Dr. Squatch stuff, you know, we'd already built like a 25, 30 person agency that
Yeah.
was creatively led. So, you know, it was very real for a long time. We were at the time helping a lot of restaurants, stuff that would be like more San Diego based restaurants, nonprofits, which is now its own agency called Mari and Gold. So we split the agency back in 2021. But yeah, no, just that was I have no immediate moment. It's just been 15 years of squatting until we seek success. I'd love to hear your story on what the universe is telling you.
I can tell you after. It's a little bit deeper.
All right,
It's
all
a little
right.
bit. It gets a little sad, but that's more off the record stuff. But I do want to, I want to kind of open this up to you. I have questions about Dr. Squatch or Native. Which one do you want to like pick a route on so we can go deeper on?
Oh man, I mean, probably. I mean, so natives like our big like they're our biggest client right now. We've been a part of like they do a lot of work with us. Dr. Squatch was an incredible like meteoric rise. You know, we
Hmm.
took them from 3 million to hundreds of millions in sales. So it's like native the opportunity with native wouldn't exist without Dr. Squatch, but the opportunity with native is more a part
Sure.
of our
Then I'll
future. So
I'll
I
make
don't
the
know.
call. Because I
Yeah.
think I'm curious about like the universe that you built for Native's deodorant. How do you and tell us about that for the listeners that don't know? But how do you build brand worlds that actually convert? We talk about like brand awareness, building worlds before on this show, but converting is what's really interesting. Bathrodite, is that correct? The
Yes, yes,
centaur, and thinking about
yes,
those like behind those characters too. Tell us about this world. Give us the context and like those decisions and how it works.
totally. So yeah, I mean we have absolutely loved the work with native. And you know, I think what's been really interesting was when we went into it, we started with this overarching sort of insight at the time, and it's been interesting to see how it's evolved. The reason that the centaur, I can't believe I'm saying the centaur, even exists, is you know, when it came to natural products, efficacy was the biggest thing. So it's like I remember I was sitting by a pool and I heard some women talking. They were actually talking about the deodorants that they used and what worked and what didn't. And so, you know, the natural deodorant space reminds me a lot of like gluten free space as well, where like when it first came out, it really wasn't that good. And then over time, they were able to like iterate and figure out like how to make gluten free stuff work. And now, like, natural deodorants or clean deodorants in general work really, really well. Like I'm wearing it right now. I'm a big guy. Like it works. And so we were like, okay, we want to build a world in a voice. Well, one, and this is where we started like, how do we make something worth watching and consuming? Right. Like if, I think that's part of all of this is we knew the centaur was a really, really big swing. We knew it was weird. I've got six pits. I got to pamper them, baby. Like it was big, and it definitely pushed everyone's boundaries there. But for that reason, it's like, okay, I have to stop and listen to what this is. The other thing is we were able to leverage humor to speak really, really directly about the issues that people were having without it feeling like we were shaming them or making it feel taboo. And I think that's the ultimate thing that you can do with humor is just put your finger on the, like, hey, I remember there was a line in there that's like natural deodorant that actually works, isn't that just a myth? And then the guy goes like home ownership or Santa Claus, and just by being able to say like, isn't that a myth, it doesn't work, and then have someone say, no, actually it does, here's how, here's why, here's how it's different. Most brands aren't willing. It's like the same idea of like when Domino's came out with their campaign and said like, yeah, our pizza tastes like cardboard and we
Yeah.
we fixed it. It's like by telling people exactly what they're thinking, it opens them to hear something new. And I
Yeah.
think the clean beauty is not a myth universe accomplishes, one, creating something that people enjoy watching. That's important in consuming. Two, I think it leverages humor in a way that we can go after whatever issues that people have in every single category. And then ultimately, man, we watch so much stuff, like just the ability to recall anything is nearly impossible. And so being able to be consistent, Bathrodyte is a character that expands their entire mega brand. They've got body wash and hair care and lotion, and they've grown from so much from deodorant from the time we started working with them originally, which is why that character evolved. And we're having a ton of fun with her, and that actress is supremely talented too. That doesn't hurt.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. And then I've done my homework. It says that you love thinking about what history will say about this era that we're in currently about advertising. So I want to hear your take. What do you think the books will say 20 years from now about where we're at?
Yeah, I have two main things that I think are happening right now. One is a structural change to the way people are consuming information, and then the second is what they need to hear to want to buy. So the first thing I see is that we are going through the fracturization of all attention. When our parents' generation was growing up, whether it was like everyone gathering around to watch the season finale of MASH, or
Mhm.
even Friends is on television and everyone's watching Friends. It was like the number of TV state, like this is pre-internet, the number of TV stations were very, very small. Now we are in a moment where we have multiple social media platforms, but then even within those platforms, the algorithms push us further and further into our own camps. Like I don't
Mhm.
see any Taylor Swift stuff, but it's all over my wife's feed.
Sure.
I see a ton of basketball stuff that's not on my wife's feed, right? Um, we are in a moment where I could ask you what shows are you watching right now, and you could rattle off 10, and I'll rattle off 10, and we might share one.
Mhm.
The biggest like I remember hearing Game of Thrones at its peak, everyone it felt like was watching it, talking about it, and it had like 18 million viewers, and I was like, that's nothing. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, truly in the scope of everything. And so I'm like, okay, we are going through an extreme fracturization of where people consume content, where they spend time, where their attention is. And so it immediately changes for brands like, where do I need to be and how do I need to show up? And I can't be everywhere at once. I mean, like some brands can to some extent because they
There's
have that much money,
I was going to
you
say there's
know.
only one real place that there is a monolith of culture still tuning in, kind of, and
That would be the Super Bowl.
you've
Yep.
done a Super Bowl ad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, my prediction is the Super Bowl will be twice as expensive in
Sure.
20 years, if not 3 times more, for that singular reason.
Yep.
Because it's really hard to get everyone paying attention to anything at once unless it's either truly tragic or unbelievably viral. And even then, it's amazing to see how
Yeah.
people won't see anything. The second thing that I think people will talk about 20 years from now is that, we've been talking a lot about how there's a Simon Sinek. I feel like there's these three. I've seen these three sort of steps, and it's because of the fractalization that this happens. So when everyone was watching the same TV shows, listening to the same radio programs, reading the same newspapers, you were able to just push out a singular message about, like, this is who we are as a brand or a company or a product, back in the Mad Men era. And like, the attention was already there, and you're like, here, let me shove whatever I want to say in front of you. And then in the 1990s, it became really, really popular for, and I say early 2000s, it became really popular for everyone to have their values, right? The company values. It was like, that was all the rage. I mean, we still have company values. I'm not saying they're not important, but the company values became this thing that it was like, oh, our company, our brand has to have like a soul and a sense of purpose, And so along comes Simon Sinek, and Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do or how you do it, but why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh
that,
yeah.
but it was
Start
a
with the why.
big TED Talk moment. And the analogy that I give is that realization is like understanding that the world is round and it's not flat. Meaning, it's a big discovery. It's a big deal that it's the evolution of how brands think about themselves and how they relate to other consumers. Um, but even after we discovered the world was round, we still believed that we were the center of the universe and that the sun and all the other planets revolved around us. And we found out later, no, we revolve around the sun. We all revolve around the sun. So I think we're seeing more and more like the consumer is at the center of their own universe, and we revolve around them. Um, and we are in orbit to them and their life. And so it's their why that matters. And so it's a pretty big difference when it comes to messaging on speaking. Instead of we, it's you, right? It's really drilling into why, what is the why of these consumers. And that's what leads to the messaging, the creative, as well as the channels that you're in, because everyone has their own little orbit. And as a brand, you want to become part of it, not necessarily. I think a lot of brands think, oh, my job is to essentially attract them into my orbit, right? So my job is to pull them towards me by telling them how great I am and why we do what we do. And it's like, that's not, I don't know the why of the maker of my shoe brand. I'm looking out. It's like, I don't know the why of the shoe brand I buy. I don't know the why of my car brand I buy. I know my why. I know why I bought it. I know what it reflects about who I want to be or who I want to become. And so realizing that reframes everything. And I think we'll see that. I think those two things, hopefully I didn't get like too lecture meta on this, but like, I do think those two things are happening in real time. Yeah. And it gets me excited because I think people that recognize that opportunity sooner can take advantage of it.
For sure. And it seems like you guys are doing just that. Now,
we're doing our best to.
I love it. And, so my final thing is you've been the boss of a lot of employees over the past 15 plus years, right? So what's your best advice for an early entry level advertising professional that's starting either at Raindrop or any agency? From what you've seen, you've promoted people. I'm sure you let some people go. It's just the nature of business. So what advice do you have for the people just starting out in this industry?
Man, that's a great question. One of the things that I've noticed about people who are really, really successful in what we do, and this actually I had this moment where I was trying to coach up one of our account managers way, way back when. And I kind of stumbled into this, but because I was like, oh man, like I know she can do this, but something's just not like, it's not clicking yet. And I was like, go and just watch every commercial this brand's ever made, read every page and every SKU on their website. Like, I want you to know the brand better than the brand knows the brand. And if you do that, you will become a partner to them in a way that you can't when you're constantly asking questions like, what about this? What about that? And so I realized that especially when you are starting out, the more that you can immerse yourself in what it is that you're working on, the more successful you're going to be. And I think a lot of times we're kind of sitting back waiting for someone to hand us the answer or to give us the brief or give us the information. And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about if you're like let's say you're just starting out and you're a writer or an account manager and you're just waiting for that, you get that brief or you're waiting for a brief from a strategist, and it's all based on secondhand information. I'm like, if you're working with a bank, like go into the bank. Like don't open an account if you don't need to, but go through the process up until you do. Like understand what people are going through, what the experience is like, what the interior is like, because it will give you empathy for what they're trying to do and ultimately put you in a position where you can make informed recommendations. And it doesn't matter if you're 22 or 23 or 50, 60, 70, like that is valuable no matter what. So that would be one thing I would say I've noticed. And the people that are best at it, you don't even have to ask them to do it. They're just naturally curious. And I think that would be my second thing is being naturally curious is ultimately the best thing you can do. I mean, in all seriousness, if someone's listening to Breaking and Entering right now, what better thing could they be doing for their career, right? They're listening to brand leaders, they're listening to agency leaders, they're hearing questions like this. What can you be doing to better your career as a young person? So just by listening to something like Breaking and Entering, they're doing exactly what they should be doing in their young 20s or 30s, whenever.
Thank you so much for that. What's the name of your show for people that want to learn more?
So I have a podcast called Marketing People Love. And it's really it's definitely brand focused. We talk to brands about what they're doing that people are moved by and interested in. We've had a couple guests recently who are just on the top of their game brand wise. Preston Rutherford, for example, he developed Chubbies. Sean Riley from Dude Wipes, who is he's like the Yoda of brand building. This guy is incredible. And I also had a gentleman who was with Purple and Kizik recently as well on there. So a lot of really, really great content if you're just like, I can't get enough.
Love it. Well, Jacques, how can people reach out to you if they want to work with you, work for you? What's the best way to do so?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. And that's probably the best place. And then obviously our website to find us, raindrop.agency is where you can find the agency if you're interested in working with us. But yeah, thanks for asking.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. This has been great. I learned so much. The leading brand performance agency in the world, Raindrop. Jacques, thank you again.